these are kitty. Yep, got it. These are kittiwakes that are flying through, and I just love that shot. I know they're not really in focus, but it was pretty cool shot. So there we go. Lois told you a little bit about me. You're right. I'm now the president of the DVOC, and I live in Rydell, which is in Montgomery County, and I do a lot of birding. If you were on earlier, you heard me and Lois talking about Cape May and Villas and all that stuff. So let's jump in and talk about. I'm going to talk about St. Paul Island. And just, kind of some background and history on the island and some geography. We're to start with that. St. Paul is one of what they call the Pribilof Islands, and it's not in the Aleutian chain. It's a different set of islands that are right out there in the Bering Sea. I kind of show on the left-hand side a picture of where they're located. It's about an 800-mile distance between St. Paul and Anchorage. So if you've ever been to Alaska, you'll have pretty much of a sense there. The island itself is, pretty small. It's got one loop road, got kind of one loop road around it, and is, pretty sparsely populated. And so in the history is that the islands were not permanently, they didn't have any permanent habitants on the island until the Russians came. Prior to the Russians, the Alouettes, which are the native people that are usually, found on the Aleutian Island chain, would go to the Pribilofs and set up hunting camps, and they would hunt for the fur seals and kind of put these huts up and do these hunts and then leave the island, or they would go fishing or crabbing and then they would leave the island. They wouldn't stay there. When the Russians established a colony on the Pribilofs, that's when they really started to inhabit the island. And the Pribilofs, of course, are named after one of the Russian fur tradesmen named, I can't pronounce it. It's like Pribilof, but it's got different letters in it. And, kind of the sad part of that is that when the Russians found the fur seal colony, they really tried to make a big business out of it, but they didn't have enough people to do the work. So they went to the Aleutian Islands and they took the native people and they put them on a boat and they sent them out here. And they basically enslaved these people to work for them in this fur trade. And what's interesting about it now is that the Aleutians that are on the island are Russian Orthodox, and that's why I have the part here about the Orthodox Church. So one of the things after the Russians left, one of the things that remained was the Orthodox religion. And today, St. Paul has about 540 residents on the island in total. About 480 of those or so are still Alouettes, so they're native people that live there, and they live there most of the year. Some live there full time, some come back and forth from the mainland or from the Aleutian Islands and back and forth. The other people that come on and off the island are processors. Fishing, crabbing, processing is done there. If anybody's ever seen that show, what's called The Deadliest Catch, on television, where they do that crabbing and then you see them offloading the crab, that's where they're doing it. They're doing it on St. Paul Island. They're offloading the crabs and they're offloading fishing boats, and they process this fish and this crab right there on the island. So crabbing, processing, and birding are the three main industries on the island now. So I'm going to show a couple of slides that just kind of give you the lay of the land here at St. Paul. This is the town and St. Paul is the town. You could see at the top of the photo here, there's a couple of big water tanks. There's a couple, these very small homes that are pretty interesting. They're painted all different colors. It's a really kind of cute and quaint town. And over on the right side here, a little bit, you could see the Russian Orthodox Church. So it's the only church on the island. So the island has one church, it has one store, it has one bar, it has one fish processing plant, and that's about all it has. Down in the corner here, I'm showing you little maps of where I took this picture, right? So this is the bottom. This is kind of the south middle of the island where St. Paul, the town, is. We did a lot of our birding and in and around this area, and I'll show some more pictures of that later. Here's another view of the town from the other side of the town. This is being taken across the harbor. So you're still seeing some of those, the houses and the landscape like that. Now we're looking at another view of the island from up in the northeast corner. And this is the lake that they call Big Lake. The name of the lake is literally Big Lake. And we birded here as well. And then here's the center of the island, right in the center of the island. These islands of Pribilofs are volcanic islands that grew up right in the middle of the Bering Sea there. And what's obscured by the fog here is the highest point on the island, which is, I think, about 800 feet above sea level. So, it does go up pretty much when you're trying to drive it. Down on the windward side of the island, this is the windward side where some of the big cliffs are. And we did a lot of birding here. This is on the western side of the island. Beautiful terrain here. But I show you all of these pictures, and what did we notice about all the pictures? What's missing? Anything missing to you guys?
Trees.
That's right. That is exactly right. There's no tree. There's actually 3 trees on the island, and they were planted there next to the airport or next to the weather station. There's 3 little trees that they're not even as tall as I am on the island. So yeah, there's no trees on the island. It is completely barren, and this is one of the an American soldier that's buried here up on one of the bluffs here. So you're right, there's no trees. I mean, the whole island just looks like this. You could see for miles and miles and miles around the island. The island is just full of waist-high grass, and they call it puchki. And puchki is like big celery. So it's got this it smells like celery. It's got these tall flowers on the left-hand side here. If you've ever seen celery bloom, it kind of has that kind of a flower on it. And basically all we did all day is wade in waist-high puchki looking for birds. And you can see how high it is on the picture on the right. These are the friends that I went to St. Paul with. There was only 4 of us on our trip, and we had quite a time. So let's talk about birding locations real quickly. I pulled this map off of eBird, and we can see that these are the places. If you've ever used the eBird mapping feature, you'll know that the brighter the color, the more bird species that have been seen there. A lot of people just put one list in called St. Paul Island, and you'll see that that's the red one and kind of in the middle of the island. But if we look around, you'll see that the birding is mostly done around the edges of the island, all the way from the top, kind of top right-hand corner there in the northeast, down around the bottom, around the south. There's not much that happens up on the north side of the island birding wise. I don't know why. But here's a photo of the big lake. You know, another photo, I think it's the photo in my background in my video as well. I think I picked the same one here. But these are the kind of the birding spots that we go to. So there's, you know, the big lake. So we're looking for birds on the lake itself. We're looking for ducks and geese and grebes and those kind of birds. We're looking for shorebirds around the sides. And then, you know, gulls and that kind of thing, kittiwakes and all kinds of birds like that. And then they took us to this really fun place called the crab pots, right? So this is a very a highly birded area on the island, believe it or not. These are all the crab pots that are just stored in these big, you know, kind of in this big open lot. And for some reason, it does attract birds. I think because there's not a tree for the bird to kind of go and hide in and find some cover, they find these crab pots and they dive in. So when you see rare bird alerts from St. Paul Island and you're seeing these kind of, you know, Russian type warblers and pipits and those kind of birds, they're often found right here in the crab pots because they're trying to, you know, take cover and hide once they find the island. Another place that is an interesting site, this is my friend Barbara. Another interesting site is this volcanic rock area. Well, this is pretty high up on that, you know, kind of the highest point on the island. And there's this volcanic rock. You could see it's, you know, different colors. And for some reason, birds also like to go near this kind of canyon wall. And then, of course, the third best place to bird on the island is the dump, you know. So you'll see there's a lot of debris here. And again, I think it provides cover for the birds. And you know, we searched the dump a couple of different days trying to find some different birds. So this is what, you know, you're doing. Instead of being in the woods or in the forest, you're kind of looking at the dump and you're looking at the crab pots and that kind of thing. We did a lot of birding right off of the sea cliffs, looking for all manner of seabirds. We had, you know, a bunch of different birds, which I'll get to in a minute. But you know, kittiwakes flying back and forth here, of course. But we had yellow-billed loon and Pacific loon, and so we were, you know, constantly looking for. We had emperor goose. So there's a lot of good birds that we're just, you know, using spotting scopes along the way to find. I just take a minute and show you that that's me on the left here, and Todd Fellenbaum and Barbara Nevin. I think Marty took this picture, but I wanted to show you guys the jacket that I bought. This jacket. It has all this Alaska birds on it, but we're not in person, so I didn't get to do it. Another landscape photo that I thought was interesting. We, you know, no matter where you are on the island, you're in waist deep Putschke and you're treading around, there are different ways that the people who live on the island find their way, because everything looks the same. You know, if you've ever been lost in the pine barrens, it all looks the same. Or if you've ever been out in the desert and you start to wonder which way to go, the same happens in this Putschke. You really start to get lost. What they do is they put these Orthodox crosses up, and if you stand in front, directly in front of the cross, you will find either the main church in the town. These crosses will lead you to that church, or they'll lead you to, in this case, there's a chapel that's built way out on that kind of up by the big lake on that top part of the island. So you can always kind of get to somebody who can help you. In this case, it would be the chapel or the church. So I thought that was an interesting photo. Let's talk about birds. The birds species count here. There's been 316 species recorded on St. Paul Island, which seems to me like a lot of different bird species for an island that's only, 5 miles, 5 or 6 miles across in total. I think it's like 40 square miles if you add it all up. In the past 10 years, there's been 273 recorded. I think that's because more birders are actually going there and taking an interest in doing some birding. Fall is the best time to go for quantity and variety of birds. You'll see there's 214 species that, are fall, right? August through November have been recorded. And the breeding season actually has a lot of breeding birds on the island, 163 species. When we go there on a birding trip in the fall, we're looking for target birds. St. Paul Island is pretty well known for a few types of shorebirds. Sea eagles are there a lot. Pelagic type birds like shearwaters, albatross occasionally, are seen, and ducks and geese. As for passerines, anything is possible. So why is that? Why does an island that is tiny, 40 square miles, no trees, have this many birds? And the answer is wind and the position of the island in the sea. And the reason that these islands get a lot of birds is the same reason that Nome, you'll hear of Gamble Island and Nome and those kind, the Aleutian Islands, they get a lot of rare birds as well. It's because that's the way the wind is blowing. The wind is blowing off of that Russian, the continent, off of Russia, and then kind of across that Bering Sea. Any bird who gets caught up in that wind and survives that distance is going to end up finding those tiny little specks of land, and they're just going to land. So we get a lot of birds that way. The other reason is because of water. So there's a lot of water, which attracts a lot of seabirds because it's a great fishing ground. That's why they do the deadliest catch type of fishing up in that area. It is chock full of, and that's why all the fur seals are there. There's just so much food for the seals and the birds that they go there, and then they find these cliffs and they nest. And so there's a lot of birds that show up there to nest. And so these sea cliffs have a lot of nesting birds. There's two different types of puffins. These here are horned puffins. They also have tufted puffins that nest right here on the cliffs. These are on the left-hand side are cormorants. They have murres and all kinds of alcids nest on these cliffs. So while fall is a really great time to go birding St. Paul Island for some variety of birds, maybe some, rare birds and something like that. The other time to go to St. Paul Island is in June and July, when all of these birds en masse are there. Millions of birds are there nesting on those cliffs. And so if you're a photographer and you're interested in getting those, full-size photos of puffins with the, with all the fish in their mouth and they're feeding their young and everything like that, the Pribilofs are a great place to go. St. Paul Island is a great place to go for that. And here's just an example of what those cliffs, how close you can get to those cliffs. So the puffins and the cormorants that are in the photo here, I literally walked out of the dining hall and I walked about 5 minutes, right across the parking lot, and there these birds were. So it's up close and personal type photography opportunity, especially if, again, if you want to go in June or July. So in our trip, we went in September. So we were there for 4 full days, or 4.5 days, 4 friends in September of 2018. And the reason that we went is because my job, I work for a nonprofit organization, and we provide tech services to other nonprofits across the country. And one of my customers is the Prince William Sound Aquaculture Corporation. They are a salmon hatchery, and so they're designated in the Prince William Sound area to run all the salmon hatcheries. And they needed all new computers and network equipment, that kind of stuff. So my coworker Omar and I went up, and so I was there for about a week prior to the trip, for about a week in Cordova, Prince William Sound area, doing actual work. And then I met my three friends to go ahead and continue on to St. Paul. So once I knew I was going, most people that want to go to St. Paul Island or what a trip of that magnitude plan, well in advance, maybe over a year in advance. Maybe they're getting a tour company to help them. And it's, kind of well planned out and thought out. In our case, I found out that I needed to go for the job. I knew maybe the second week in August that I had to be up for the job the first week of September. So on a whim, I asked a couple of friends, and three of them said, yeah, sure, we'll go. And I literally Googled St. Paul Island birding. I Googled it, and I got all kinds of information back. I got really confused about the information I had. And then there was a phone number on the St. Paul Island website, and I called the phone number and somebody answered. And that's how it all started. And what I found out is, while it is possible for you to just, go to Alaska Airlines or something like that and try to book a flight on your own to St. Paul Island. The fact of the matter is, there's only one company that flies out there, ironically named Penn Air, flies to St. Paul, and they only fly on certain days. Not every day of the week can you get a flight in or out. There is a hotel on the island. However, you can book it directly. However, what I found out about the hotel is, that's great. Maybe you could call Penn Airlines and get a flight. Maybe you could get a hotel room by calling the King Ider Hotel and booking directly, but the hotel doesn't have any food, and there's no rental cars on the island. So you'd kind of get there and then not really be able to explore the island and go birding. Furthermore, everything looks, unless you know what you're doing and you've been there before, it would be almost impossible for you to find as many birds on your own. Even if you could rent a car, find a car to rent or get yourselves around, just tromping through the Putschkill, it would be exhausting, and you wouldn't probably get as many species as you could if you were on a tour. Many tour companies go there. The big famous one, the ones that we all know, go there. The rock jumpers and the vents and the wild wings, or whatever they're called, right? And the field guides, they do go there. But what I found out is, by going to, this is the website, I just took a snapshot of their website. I literally dialed their 877 number, got somebody on the phone, clicked on the plan your trip and everything. And what I found out is that you can go there through what they call a TDX experience. And TDX stands for something, don't ask me what it stands for, but basically it is a native owned company that runs everything on the island. It's owned and operated by the native people who live there. It's a corporation, and what they do is they actually set the tour up for you. They hire 2 guides per season to just spend the whole season on the island. So those guides work for TDX. So even if you did go with Vent or Wild Sides or other, companies that we kind of all know about, those guides would then hook up with the two resident guides and you'd all go together anyway. So we went through the TDX um, corporate thing. And what we found was we got the whole package done. When I talked to the guy, I think his name was George or something like that. I said, oh, I have 3 friends and myself, so 4 people, and we're very interested in coming to St. Paul in September. He said, September of 2019 or September of 2020? I said, like next month, like this September. And he said, I've never had anybody ask me that before. Hold on. And sure enough, there was room at the hotel and he got us booked, and, it all really worked out well. So the airfare was included. The hotel was included. There's 32 rooms in the hotel. There were only 6 rooms occupied when we were there. The food is included. So you get breakfast, lunch, and dinner included. And they're served at the commissary, which is at the fish processing plant, because that's the only place they have food. They provide you with the guides and the transportation. So everything was included in this package. And honestly, I can't remember how much we exactly paid, but I didn't think it was that expensive. I mean, it was pretty reasonable. Of course, you had to get yourself to Anchorage and then, to get out there. The airfare, our flight was perfect. You go on this little plane, which I think I just showed you, the plane is that size plane. It seats maybe 20 people total. But as I said, they don't fly every day. And if there's any chance of bad weather, they cancel you. When we got to the airport in Anchorage, there was another guy that had been sitting there for 2 days because the flight that he was supposed to be on, whatever, was canceled. And there he was 2 days later trying to get out onto the island. We what did we refer to him as? I can't remember. I think it was like Miserable Norman or something like that. The guy was just miserable the whole time. His friend left and went home. But anyway, this is the flight. So this is what the flight looks like. This is what the airport looks like. And if you look on the left there, that's the hotel. So the airport and the hotel are the same building. So they're together like that. I told you earlier, we took our meals at what they call the commissary. This is at the fish processing plant. And what you do is you go up there. There's Norman. I don't know if anybody knows that guy. He's from like Michigan or something like that. But anyway, he was the guy who was stuck. The guy on the left on the stairway is the guy who was stuck at the airport for 2 days. And then that's Marty Delwo, the next guy over, and then Barbara, and then Todd Fellenbaum, and then our 2 guides. One of them is named Sully, and the other one is named Alex. So you'd go up there and you'd go into the commissary. So they fed all the fish people, the processing plant people, and they fed us as well. And it was like being in a lunchroom cafeteria with the cafeteria ladies. We'd go up, you had to be at lunch, you had to be at breakfast at a certain time. So 8 a.m. was breakfast. And we never started birding until 9 a.m., which when I read it in the brochure, I said, wow, we're missing out on so much birding. But that's not the case. We're so far out in the Bering Sea to the west that we're way out there on the Alaska, on the edge of the Alaska time zone. So it never got light until 9 a.m. In September. And then it would stay light until 9 p.m. So we would have our breakfast at 8 a.m. We'd be out birding at 9 a.m. We'd come back for lunch. We had to be at lunch when they served it. So we had to be back at lunch at noon, from noon to 1. And then we went out birding again. We had to be back at 5, from 5 to 6 for dinner. And then we go out birding again till 9 o'clock at night. So it was a big full day of birding and this food that was wonderful. I mean, these ladies know how to cook. We had, whatever you wanted for breakfast, lunch, dinner. I mean, they had Taco Tuesday. They had Taco Tuesday at the commissary. And the native people, even if they didn't work at the processing plant, they would come into the commissary to get Taco Tuesdays. They had steak on Wednesdays. People would come in and bring their family in. It was like their night out on the town to go to the commissary for these special dinners. So it was really great food. One time, I mean, I'm telling you the truth. If I told you that I had cheese blintzes on St. Paul Island in the middle of the Bering Sea, you wouldn't believe it. Those blintzes were as good as you would get in New York City. Why? Because of the Russians. They're cooking for the Russians, and Russians like their cheese blintzes. So there you go. Let me pause here before we jump into the actual birds. Does anybody have any questions that you'd want to ask about? I see that there's been some back and forth about what kind of bird is a tringa, right? So that's a great question, Michael. Tringas are a type of shorebird, and Armis answered it pretty well. Willets, yellowlegs, those kind of that kind of size and shape of a shorebird. Any other questions before we move on to check out the birds? Okay, great. I'm going with a no. Yes? Somebody have something?
No, I was, it's Donna. I said
Donna.
yes, not.
Yes, no. Okay. Yes to the no. Great. So I'm going to jump in and kind of, these are, I think probably 99% of these photos are mine. If they're not, I'll call it out if it's somebody else's photo that I'm sharing. Again, we saw, a couple of photos already of the horned puffins, and these are the horned puffins. So on the east coast of the United States, we have Atlantic puffins. On the west coast, we have horned puffins. Come on, click. Here's my list. Not that you're, in all 2 species, but pretty interesting. 62 species of birds. 16 of those were life birds for me, and 3 of those were not life birds, but they were what I would consider an ABA bird. For instance, a Pacific golden plover. I had never seen one in the ABA area. White-tailed eagle, white-tailed sea eagle, believe it or not. I've seen a white-tailed sea eagle in Poland, but not in so it wasn't a life bird for me, but it was an ABA bird for me. Eurasian skylark, same thing. I had seen one in, England, Scotland area and other places. But then all the rest of them here, with the check marks on, are life birds for me, and kind of target species, right? So sharp-tailed sandpiper, beautiful, little shorebird, and I'll show pictures of some of these. Most of them I think I have pictures of. Rock sandpiper, common snipe. The tringas here are tattlers, so gray-tailed tattler. I said willet earlier. I didn't mean willet, I meant tattlers. So the gray-tailed tattler was here, and I have a great photo of gray-tailed tattler and wandering tattler side by side, so you can see the difference. And some of those other birds. And then you can see there's a lot of other birds up here. Where's the emperor goose? Yeah, there you are. So so we'll start out right away with saying that there's 2 types of kittiwakes in the world. One of them is called the black-legged kittiwake. The other one's called the red-legged kittiwake. And if you can see the difference, you'll notice that the difference here is one of the birds is slightly shorter, has a more rounded head, slightly stockier build. Okay, one of them has red legs, the other one has black legs. And that's how you tell them apart. And these 2 birds were very cooperative. This was right on the dock. First day, this was before we got off the plane. We threw our bags in our hotel. The guides took us out, and first thing they did was take us to see the kittiwakes because everybody wanted to see the kittiwakes. So here's some, here's a great way to tell the two of them apart. But you can tell, so one of them is shorter and stockier and the other one isn't. Here's another photo of the red-legged kittiwake. I just think they are just adorable birds. They're beautiful in flight. They're very buoyant in flight. You can't miss them. One of the other birds that I really wanted to see, because this is a rosy finch. This is a gray-headed rosy finch. And in the ABA area, there's three species of rosy finch. There's a brown-headed, a black-headed, and a gray-headed. And I had seen the other two, and I was dying to see a gray-headed rosy finch. But I can tell you that September is not their prettiest month. They're in full molt, and they are just the ugliest, hideous looking birds. But anyway, it was a life bird for me. They're also nasty little birds. They chase and peck at anything else that shows up on the island. So nobody really likes these birds, but there it was, up close and personal. One of the most common birds on the island is snow bunting. And here's snow bunting here. And the other bird that's very common on the island are long spurs. Here's tufted puffin. This is the second puffin species that's on the island. Again, a breeder on the island. So far, every bird that I've shown you is kind of a common bird on the island. They're there most of the year, breeding there, and they don't really, leave the island. So this is tufted puffin. I mean, I think they're just adorable birds. And again, all over the rocks around there. Here's one of the other common birds on the island. This is rock sandpiper. So rock sandpipers are found along the west coast, kind of up in the northwest. And I was really thrilled to see one. And then we saw them all over the island. So another common bird on the island. Here's sharp-tailed sandpiper. So this is a target bird. And I know that they do show up along the west coast. California has reports. I think California has a couple of them right now. They do, it's kind of that migrating, it's where they migrate down the west coast. But these birds, we saw, I don't know, probably 16 of them in total. And, they're found in this low grassy area, kind of in the marsh. And you can see how close I was. Pretty close to this bird. They were. I have another photo where I have a picture of the bird and Todd's boots in the same shot there. They're just really beautiful birds and easily photographed. Oh, I'm sorry, I lied about that. Hold please. Oh my gosh, this is pectoral sandpiper. My bad. This is pectoral sandpiper. Another beautiful bird, but you can see pectoral sandpiper in New Jersey if you want to see pectoral sandpiper, or up in Bucks County, or probably someplace in Chester County. But very approachable bird. This is sharp-tailed sandpiper. I apologize. But again, you can see how close we were to these birds. They are not that afraid of people. Maybe they don't see a lot of people on the island, or they're not that afraid. So this is sharp-tailed sandpiper. Beautiful, fresh plumage on this bird, and again, really approachable. So those of you who like shorebirding would like St. Paul Island. Here's the photo I talked about earlier. This is wandering tattler and gray tattler side by side. And you're going to ask me which is which right now. I believe that this is the gray tattler, believe it or not, and this is wandering because of the way the rump is. You can see the difference in the spots, and how one of them has less. If one of you guys is hip to this and you want to text which one's which, that would be great. So I would say the bird on the left or the bird on the right. Which one would you say is gray versus wandering tattler? We'll come back to it in a bit. we were lucky enough to see 2 different stints on our trip. We had a redneck stint that was, again, I'm talking about really close. These birds are really close. There were no spotting scopes involved. We walked right up on the mud flats and stood there, and they kind of walked right past us. We had redneck stint and we had little stint. Both similar to our least sandpipers. So if you're not that familiar with these, separating these shorebirds out, little stint, redneck stint are really kind of the size and shape of our least sandpiper. So they're pretty small birds. So this is the, I just was going to say least, no. Hold on, this one is, the first one was redneck. This is little stint. So this is little stint, and then the one before that, so that's redneck stint there. So they're nice little chunky monkeys found right in the harbor mud flat. There's a mud flat kind of close between the airport and the food processing plant, or the fish processing plant. We stopped there a lot at low tide, or rising tide. And there were lots of shorebirds on those flats. And we did, like I said, we did get to pick out both, so 2 species of stint right on the mud flats. So again, that's a least stint. That was a little bit further away for me to take that photo. It was terrible lighting. But we did, like I said, we did get to see it. This is a pipit. This is a red-throated pipit that this is the only photograph I could get of this bird. It's one of these parts of the day where we would just walk through that puchki up to our waists in puchki and just kind of tromp through the puchki, and then this little bird would take off, and half the people that were with us would all kind of scream the name of what they thought it was, and the guides were listening to the chip note of the bird and say, oh, that's a pipit, it's a red, whatever, red-throated pipit. And then I just happened to point my camera and got a picture of one of them. There were many more of these that happened that there was not a photograph of during the day, but this one I happened to catch in flight. This poor little bird. I showed you a photo of this kind of red lava rock earlier. This is up in a higher elevation of the island. We drove up there. This is a blue tail. This bird is, I just felt so bad for it. It only has one eye. You're looking at its good one eye. This is one of the birds that the rosy finches were kind of attacking along the way. And so it's kind of bittersweet to have seen this bird. We did see it, and it was there and alive and thriving because it would just keep the bad eye to the rocks and then work the good eye out and, catch what little bit of bugs are on the island. And it was, seemingly surviving. But this is a really beautiful little bird from, again, from Russia. You'll find them very, abundantly from Russia. This is one of those birds that got blown in. The guides really did check the weather. They checked that weather report very twice a day to find out when the winds were coming. They want really strong winds from the northwest, and that's what kind of throws the birds over the sea and puts them down onto the island. This one is emperor goose, not really required for the winds to show up, but this is emperor goose. It's a really pretty little goose that is found in the Bering Sea, quite often, and and it's a regular. I think you can get this bird almost any trip that you take to St. Paul. You're going to find emperor goose. on that. This is gray streaked flycatcher. I'm sure I had to draw a circle around it because it blended into this gray rock. So this bird was with the blue tail, kind of in the same area as the blue tail. And we just happened upon it. Somebody just looked the right way at the right time and found this bird because it was so well camouflaged and not really moving around a lot. So this was another one of those vagrants that did show up on the island when we were there as well. So that was a real find for a lot of people on the island. This is the bird that, wowed the crowd. So this is white-tailed sea eagle. And you can see in the distance, there's cliffs, if you look at the photo, in the distance, you'll see cliffs kind of at the top of the photo. This stretch of water is probably a mile across. We're standing on the top of cliffs that look like those cliffs, but we're on the other side of the water. This bird had been at St. Paul for at least a month, and very intermittent reports of it. Miserable Norman, this is the only bird he came to the island to see. Every other bird, I just showed you the blue tail, I showed you the gray streak, the pipit, he sat in a van. Yeah, I've seen that before. I've seen that before. I've seen that before. The eagle was the only thing he wanted to see. We would sit, if you look on this photo, I know it's a terrible photo, but on this photo, if you look all the way to the right along those cliffs, if you just kept looking to the right there, the cliffs end, and that's kind of where the port is, the fish processing plant is. He would park himself there every day on a stool with a spotting scope, and he would scan the cliffs that are behind us. If we're looking at the photo, behind the photo, he would scan those cliffs, and 3 days, no sea eagle on those cliffs, and it was no sea eagle. We happened to be driving one of the roads, and the only raptor that we could see came flying over us. It was this eagle. We saw it dip behind the cliffs. So we all climbed out. We climbed those cliffs, and we spread out along the cliffs, and we were going to find this bird. And this bird took off right in front of me. It was down over the cliff, but it took off and flew away from us like this. I'm telling you, it's a big bird. I was kidding though. I said I could have put a saddle on that thing and rode it. It was that big. I think that bird could carry me away. That's how big that bird was. It was really something to behold. So that was one of the highlight birds for me and for a lot of the people on the trip. Now we'll talk about the plethora of mammals that are on the island. There's exactly 4 species of mammal on the island. This is the fur seal. There's a big bull fur seal that was on one of the beaches, and they're very protective of the seals. We were only allowed to drive by, and if they're in the road you have to stop, and all this stuff. But this big bull, he didn't seem to mind us at all, and kind of gave us the hairy eyeball. On the same beach you'll see mothers and pups, and if you've ever been down to I know you've all been to the shore. If you've ever been down the shore and you kind of sit on the beach and you watch all the little kids go into the waves, they're little kids like knee high, and they go into waves, and then they run back out again, and they try it a little bit more. This is what these seal pups were doing. They would run into the water, and then the water would hit them and they'd run back out. It was adorable. Yeah, I mean, just really cute. Here they are. So you'd see them, look at them all playing on the beach. These are all like this year's pups, and the moms are kind of watching them, right? And they would all run in for like a little bit of wet, and then they'd all run back out again. So we got to, I mean, this is just so much fun. Just sit there and watch this. I could have watched this all day. This guy was right in the harbor. And he just kept looking at us no matter where we were. We'd walk along the cliffs. We were looking at the those ugly rosy finches, and he kept popping his head up. He wanted to know where, or she, I guess, wanted to know where we were at all times. And you could see the big flipper coming out the back. So this was really fun. Here's a nice intimate moment with the mother and pup. And you can see just how adorable they all are. So that's species number one. That's mammal species number one. Mammal species number two on the island are Arctic foxes. And, if you've ever watched National Geographic television or, nature on PBS, you're wondering why this Arctic fox is black and not white like I am. I thought Arctic foxes were always white. They're not. They're black on this island because it's a lava island that gets no snow. So they've never evolved to turn white. So all the foxes are this beautiful charcoal gray fox. And I mean, they're everywhere. They're all around the fish processing plant. They are in the parking lots. I mean, look how close, we're getting to these foxes, and just everywhere. Here's, another one kind of laying on the rocks, just as comfortable as can be with us around. Here's one that was in the parking lot, right? And you can see that they do get a little bit of gray on them, but they will not turn white like the Arctic foxes on the mainland do. So this is mammal species number two. Mammal species number three are caribou. There's a herd of, I don't know, 1,000 or so caribou on the island, and they were brought to the island by the Russians so that they had meat that they could, use. And this is one of the photos that you can see I've credited to. I stole it from the St. Paul Island Tour website because we only saw them so far in the distance that it wouldn't even have been worth taking a photo. And we only saw maybe 5 or 6 of them. This is, probably most of the herd right here on this. But again, they were imported. So this is mammal species number 3. Mammal species number 4 is the most difficult for anybody to find. And in fact, we found one, and there it is. It's the St. Paul Island shrew. And it's a tiny, tiny little mouse-like thing. What you're seeing is, if you've ever seen a camera lens, it's got that big hood on the front of the camera lens. My friend Marty got smart when we found it and kind of ringed it in there so we could take a quick picture of it before letting it go. But we were looking all over the island for this little shrew. And on the last day, we were coming out of that abandoned car, the junkyard, and we saw this thing dart across the road, and it actually hid under the van tire. And that's the only reason we actually did get to find it. Our guides had never seen one, so this was very exciting for some of us nerds on the trip. So 4 mammal species, we got all 4 mammal species. So being there, it's an adventure. It was an adventure for me. The hotel is the King Eider Hotel. There's a couple of photos. This is me holding up a whale vertebra. This is a bowhead whale. The native people hunt bowhead whales, which are very common in these waters. And I don't know if they still do it today. They definitely still hunt the fur seals. You have to be a native of the island, and there's only so many permits per year. They do kind of a cultural hunt of the fur seals. On the right is me sticking my hand so I can say I was in the Bering Sea. This photo here is us with our guides, and you can see that we're standing in a hole here. This hole is one of the ways that the native people, one of the ways that the native people can get close to the fur seals to hunt them. What they would do is dig this out and kind of hide down in there and then look to the horizon. And when the seals came in, they would kind of rush the seals and you know, club them and all that terrible thing. But so here's us improvising some breakfast. This is the cheese blintz day. So you can see that lava, all the roads are kind of just crushed lava, and it does a number on the tires and just tears those tires up sometimes. So there was a flat tire and we had to, you know, kind of improvise our food. We went to the commissary in another pickup truck, and the lunch ladies, they were like, "Where are you? We miss you. How come you didn't come for breakfast?" We said, "We had a car breakdown." So they packed us this whole trunk, this whole big carton of food, and we took it back to the hotel, and everybody had their breakfast anyway. So I wanted to show this. I thought this was a pretty interesting sign. This is the sign. This sign is like 6 foot, 8 foot tall, right? It looks really small because it's on a PowerPoint, but this is like 6 or 8 feet tall. And it says, "Welcome to St. Paul Island." And at the bottom, it says, "No rat infested ships allowed," right? With an exclamation. And there's like an ordinance there, right? They are very serious about rats not being on the island, because they will, you know, disrupt the bird population and all of that. So they actually employ, when we were on our flight, there were the 4 of us. There were some native people that were coming back from the mainland. And it's funny because they go to the mainland to like go to Walmart, right? That's their thing. Or they're going to a doctor's appointment. They're doing some mundane task that they have to take a flight to the mainland for, you know, get into Anchorage. So they get into Anchorage. It was the funniest thing because the whole overhead compartments in the plane were just stuffed full of pizza boxes, because I don't think they're allowed back. Like their families are like, "Don't you come back from Anchorage without that pizza," right? So they all bring like pizza back, and the cargo hold is just full of stuff that you can buy in Walmart and that kind of thing. But so it was us. It was native people who were, you know, doing their back and forth to the mainland for whatever. And then there were 2 other women on the flight, young girls, young women, and they worked for the, I don't know if it was Fish and Game Commission or some other, they were federal employees that were sent to St. Paul Island because somebody reported seeing a rat. They sent 2 people out, and these women, the whole time we were on the island for 4.5 days, they did nothing but set rat traps and check rat traps. They had a big 55-gallon drum with little holes cut into the side, big enough for rats to get in, and it was filled with rat poison, right? Because they just wanted to catch that rat. That's all they were doing. They were there for probably a week, and all they were doing is looking for that one rat that somebody said they saw. And that's how serious they are about it. Here's a couple of other quick photos. I thought this was funny. Slow down. This is not a bleepity bleep freeway, right? I mean, there's only one road. Everybody knows who's driving it, you know. So, and then there's the beer store. Of course, if anybody on the call knows it, you know, knows me and the DVO. So we call the DVOC, we call ourselves a drinking club with a bird problem. There's a beer store, and it says beer and wine sales. So I said to the guides, "Well, I'm going to go over there and buy some beer." And they kind of look, they're like, "You're going to actually go to the store?" I'm like, "There's a beer store. I'm going to go get us some beer." So I went over, I bought, I don't know, a case of beer, because there were 4 of us birders, and then there were 4 other birders that were not part of our group. But you know, we got to know them. We ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner with them. We shared the vans with them and everything like that. So I went and bought a case of beer. I go in there, and there's this native woman in there. And I said, "Oh, you know, I was just trying to get something mundane. Like, do you have any Miller Lite? Like, you know, whatever." So she got me a case of Miller Lite, and I gave her my credit card. She says, "Oh, your name's Linda." "My name's Linda." I said, oh, how about that? Ha ha. And we had a good time. And we left. And I took the beer and I made a makeshift. The lunch ladies gave me some ice in a garbage bag and I made it into a cooler. And, so we had beer at the hotel. The next night we said to the guides, I heard there's a bar. Can we go to the bar? And they're like, you want to go to the bar? None of the birders ever want to do this kind of stuff. We're like, we want to go to the bar. He took us to the bar and he walks in like he's Mr. Big Shot because he knows everybody. And sure enough, the bartender looks at me and goes, Linda. I went, Linda. Here it's the same girl. She works at the beer store during the day and she works at the bar at night. So we had a great time. Oh, it was a lot of fun. Just getting to know the locals and just stepping out and not, just running back to the hotel and kind of hiding. Super nice people is all I could tell. There's some of the beer that we bought. We were all toasting ourselves after we found the Sea Eagle on the trip. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. We took our little naps here on the mossy rocks, but it just gives you an idea of, that kind of lava rock type stuff that's on there. Anyway, that's that. Here's me at the end with, these are bowhead whale ribs. And again, some of the ways that people on the island can navigate is they'll put these bowhead whale ribs into the ground and they will designate a good hunting or fishing spot. In this case, they put the ribs in there, or I'm sorry, jawbones. These are jawbones of the whale. And then they put that buoy to indicate, just offshore here is a good crabbing area. So with that, I will stop now and ask if anybody's got any kind of questions, and I